When it comes to us novel writers, we might be wondering, well, what can we learn, in fact, from a film like The Queen? After all, it's a lot of talking, it's kind of a pot boiler. What can we learn out of it? Well, I'm here to tell you 3 tips for writing historical fiction that we can get from The Queen. So, number 1, don't forget your protagonist motivation. The Queen is, of course, about the Queen. The Queen is the protagonist of the film. And what Peter Morgan does so effectively is he sets up from the beginning a clear motivating factor for the Queen. This really is a survival story about her keeping her power, her reputation, her effect on society. When you think of a character, a motivation, a protagonist, it usually falls into these 3 categories. I would put this in that wealth category because I put that in with power. It's your placement, your status in society, and that often is the biggest motivating factor of a character. And the thing about the Queen is, like I said, it sets that up so well. And this is something that a lot of people will neglect to do when it comes to historical fiction or just fiction in general, especially though with historical fiction, because they know that there is such a compelling event, right? You're writing about an interesting time in history, maybe even a specific event in history, and you can forget that the viewpoint character, the character that we're following, needs to have that trackable goal, something that we can follow along the way. And this is something I always like to talk about. I like to talk about the fact that the most intimidating or scary image in our life is this little progress bar, right? Because we're on the edge of our seat waiting for that file to download. And that's the same way you want your audience to be for your protagonist. So when your protagonist has a concrete goal that it's clear for the audience, and this movie, it's quite clear, the Queen wants to keep that power, wants to keep her reputation. And so as the movie keeps bringing up, your reputation is slipping, your popularity is going down, the pivotal moment, what I call the pit of this movie, is when she finds out that 1 in 4 Britons want to get rid of the monarchy altogether. That is when her back is to the wall. And it's an interesting place to put a character, right? So Peter really has to set up this high stakes situation for the Queen in order for that to be a pow moment. Because it really is almost like life or death, because so much of her life is wrapped around this position. All right, tip number 2. What the Queen does so well is it showcases multiple reactions. After all, when you talk about history, you're going to bring your perspective. History is about doing research, and often it can feel a little bit like a rant. It can feel like you're making some sort of commentary because you have this point of view that, this war was bad, or this war was justified, or this political position was bad, or so on and so forth. But political rants are not great stories most of the time. You'll notice that effective politicians, even people that are trying to give a political speech, what do? They put it in a narrative. Yeah, you got that. They will tell a story. They'll often, give an anecdote. They'll be like, well, I was talking to Joe Blow Schmo on the street and things like that, because we resonate with that more than just this abstract concept. And another way that the Queen gives a sense of sophistication is it gives a lot of perspectives on the situation the Queen is facing. It's all too easy to look back at history and be like, well, these were the good guys, these were the bad guys, this was the right side of history, this was the wrong side of history. And even if you have a clear point of view, nothing wrong with that. You don't want it to be so muddy the audience doesn't know what to make of it. But even if you have a clear point of view, make sure you represent an opposing viewpoint. This work does a great job. It has all of those characters that I talk about, the core characters, the thematic characters. It gives you a perspective from all different angles. And finally, you need to determine what facts are concrete in the history you're talking about. After all, everybody comes to a historical event with a bias, with a sense of what happened. And memory is a little bit tricky. We all know that for us, perception is reality. Think of what they call the Mandela effect, right? Where people have a strong sense of something that happened and it's not what happened. On the other hand, there is a certain amount of information the audience will bring with them that they know. And those things, when you mess with, it's not going to go over too well. But don't forget that memory is a fickle thing. So you have to kind of weigh what it is that people actually know, which is true, and then maybe what even people know that's not true, and figure out how to juggle that. Because if you mess with something that people generally think is true and it's not, well, you'll get those people being like, what are you doing? That's not the way the history goes. And so you'll really have to justify it, and you may find out it's not even worth it. After all, what you're writing is historical fiction. This is not trying to tell the story exactly as it took place. Even in the context of a movie like The Queen, which does spend a lot of effort to be accurate in a fair amount of the ways that it is, it's still presenting it in a narrative. It's distilling it, it's squeezing it into that form. So those are 3 tips that we can get from the Queen to help with our writing.